scattering scrambled eggs and shattered glass across the diner floor. But Wendy Moore didn't notice the mess. Didn't notice customers staring. Didn't notice her boss appearing with a mop. Because the phone pressed against her ear had just delivered news that made her legs go weak. Her daughter's teacher, voice shaking. "Miss Moore, I need to ask you something. A man just claimed to be Sarah's father. Michael White. He signed in at the office this morning. Michael." The name Wendy hadn't spoken aloud in 9 years. The billionaire whose face appeared on magazine covers. The man who'd left before she could tell him she was pregnant. He'd found their daughter. And everything Wendy had sacrificed to protect Sarah, every double shift, every lonely night, every lie she'd told to keep them safe, was about to be tested. The lunch rush at Rosie's Diner moved exactly like every other Wednesday, relentless, loud, exhausting. Wendy Moore had her system down after 3 years. Balance 4 plates on her left arm, coffee pot in her right, smile through the chaos, ignore the ache in her feet. Table 6 needed refills. Table 9 wanted their check split 3 ways. The couple at table 12 were having the same argument they'd had last week about his mother. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She ignored it. Phil was shouting about an order going cold. A customer was waving for more ketchup. The coffee pot was getting heavy. The phone buzzed again. Most days, Wendy could let calls go to voicemail. But this was Wednesday afternoon, Sarah's school day, and schools didn't call unless something was wrong. On the third buzz, she set down the plates and pulled out her phone. Meadowbrook Elementary. Her stomach dropped. She answered while balancing against the counter. "This is Wendy." "Miss Moore?" Mrs. Constance's voice trembled. Actually trembled. "I'm so sorry to call during work, but I need to confirm something with you." Wendy's pulse spiked. "Is Sarah hurt?" No, Sarah's fine. She's in class." A pause that lasted too long. "Miss Moore, I'm calling because your daughter's father attended this morning's parent-teacher conference." The diner didn't stop. Customers kept eating. The grill kept sizzling, but Wendy's world tilted sideways. Her hands went completely numb. "I'm sorry." "What?" The words barely made it past her throat. "Mrs. Constance, there is no father on file. Sarah doesn't have—" "That's exactly why I'm calling." The teacher's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "A man came in this morning, signed in as Michael White, said he was Sarah's father, and needed to discuss her academic progress. I assumed you'd authorized it, but when I checked our records afterward, the plates fell. All 4 of them. Ceramic exploding. Eggs and hash browns scattering. Coffee splashing against the baseboard. Customers turning to stare. Phil's head appearing through the kitchen window, someone asking if she was okay. But Wendy couldn't hear any of it. Because that name, Michael, had just detonated 9 years of carefully maintained silence. "Did you say Michael White?" Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Yes, he was very professional. Very polite. He asked detailed questions about Sarah's reading comprehension, her mathematics progress, her social development. He took notes in a leather portfolio." Mrs. Constance hesitated. "Miss Moore, I wouldn't normally have allowed this, but he seemed so certain. And Sarah, well, she has his eyes. Exactly his eyes." Wendy's legs went weak. She pressed her hand against the counter, the only thing keeping her upright. "I have to go," she managed. She ended the call before Mrs. Constance could respond. The diner was staring. Phil called her name. Rita, the manager, appeared with a mop, eyebrows raised in concern. Wendy untied her apron with shaking hands, pulled it over her head, dropped it on the counter. "I need to leave," she said to the air. Rita opened her mouth to protest lunch rush. Short-staffed? Customers waiting, but something in Wendy's face stopped her. She just nodded and stepped aside. The afternoon air hit like cold water. Too bright, too normal. Cars passing, people walking their dogs. The world continuing as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Michael White knew about Sarah. Wendy made it to her car, a 12-year-old sedan with 140,000 miles and a crack across the windshield, and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Michael. She hadn't spoken his name aloud in years, hadn't let herself search for him online, hadn't tortured herself with pictures of his success. But she knew anyway. Everyone knew. White Industries wasn't just successful, it was everywhere. Tech conferences, business magazines, That profile in Forbes 6 months ago about the billionaire who sees tomorrow. And now he'd walked into Sarah's classroom. How? Wendy's mind scrambled backward, searching for answers. She'd been so careful. Birth certificate with no father listed, school forms left blank in that section, no social media posts, no paper trail connecting Sarah to Michael White. But Sarah looked like him. God, she looked exactly like him. Those gray-green eyes, storm-colored, his mother used to call them. That intensity when she focused. The way her left eyebrow lifted when she was thinking through a problem. Wendy had seen Michael and their daughter since the moment Sarah was born. Now pay close attention to what happens next. Because what you need to understand about Wendy Moore is this. 9 years ago, she made an impossible choice. And that choice, the one that seemed right at the time, was about to unravel. The memory surfaced without permission. Michael at 24. Standing in her apartment, with a half-packed suitcase and opportunity blazing in his eyes. This is my shot, Wendy. Wilson Tech wants me in San Francisco by Friday. If I can prove myself on this project, if I can show them what I'm capable of, everything changes. She'd wanted to tell him. The words had been right there, heavy on her tongue. Michael, I think I'm pregnant. Stay. Please stay. But she'd looked at his face, at the hunger there, the ambition that made him brilliant and unreachable all at once, and understood something. If she told him, he'd stay. Not because he wanted to. Because he was decent. Because responsibility would trap him better than any declaration of love. And eventually, he'd resent her for it. So Wendy had swallowed those words. She'd hugged him too briefly, too casually. She'd whispered, "Good luck." And she'd watched him walk out of her life. 3 months later, when pregnancy became undeniable certainty, she'd tried to reach him. Called his old number disconnected. Emailed the startup, no response. Contacted mutual friends, no one had current information. Michael White had become untouchable. Protected by assistance, and success, and the machinery of ambition. So Wendy had made different choices. She'd kept the baby. Moved to a smaller town, where rent was manageable. Found work at Rosie's Diner. Built a life that didn't need Michael White. And she'd never regretted it. Not when she worked double shifts to pay for Sarah's school supplies. Not when she showed up alone to parent-teacher conferences, while other mothers brought partners. Not even when Sarah asked sweet voice, curious eyes, "Mom, why don't I have a dad?" "He didn't know about you," Wendy had answered honestly. Life took us different directions. Sarah had accepted that the way children accept gravity, just another fact of existence. But now Michael knew. And Wendy had no idea what came next. Her phone buzzed. Different number. Official looking. She opened the email with hands that hadn't stopped trembling. From Meadowbrook Elementary Administration. Subject, Parent Meeting Request. Miss Moore, Mr. Michael White has requested a follow-up meeting to discuss Sarah Moore's academic progress and parental involvement. Please contact the administration office at your earliest convenience to schedule. Michael White wanted a meeting. About their daughter. The daughter he hadn't known existed until what? Today? Yesterday? How long had he known? Another buzz. Text message this time. Unknown number. Wendy. It's Michael. We need to talk. Please. She stared at those words until they blurred. Then she whispered to the empty car, to the afternoon air, to the ghost of a man she'd once loved completely. How did you find us? But that wasn't the real question. What Wendy didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Michael had been searching for her for 6 months. That he'd already seen their daughter. That he'd held a drawing she'd made. A family portrait with a father she'd never met. And what neither of them knew yet? In 3 weeks, they'd stand in a gymnasium watching their daughter present a science project, and the way Michael looked at Sarah in that moment would either heal everything or prove that some breaks can never be mended. The real question, the one making her hands shake and her heart fracture, was this. Why now? What changed? And the question buried underneath that one, the question she'd spent 9 years refusing to ask. Would he have stayed if I'd told him? Wendy didn't have answers, but she knew this. Whatever happened next would either heal 9 years of silence or destroy the life she'd built protecting her daughter from a father who'd never known she existed. And here's what you need to know, because this matters. Some of you watching this have made impossible choices too. Chosen to protect someone you love by letting someone else go. If that's you, If you've ever stood at that crossroads, you're not alone. This community right here understands what it means to choose about real choices and second chances. Speak to something in you. Because what happens when Wendy and Michael finally come face to face? You're going to want to be here for that. Michael White's office occupied the 43rd floor of White Industries headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city he'd helped transform. At 6:47 a.m., same time as always, he stood at those windows with coffee he wouldn't drink and a decision that had kept him awake for 72 straight hours. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. White, the board meeting starts in 15 minutes, and Forbes is still holding for your quote on the acquisition. Cancel the board meeting." His voice sounded hollow even to himself. Silence. Then, "Sir? Cancel it. Cancel everything today." Everything? Yes. Because nothing, not boards, not acquisitions, not Forbes, mattered compared to what had happened yesterday morning. Yesterday morning, Michael White had walked into Meadowbrook Elementary School carrying a private investigator's folder and a suspicion that had been destroying him for 6 months. He'd signed in as a parent, lied to a teacher, sat in a plastic chair designed for someone half his size, and waited for a child he'd never met but somehow already knew. And then Mrs. Constance had called for Sarah Moore. The moment that little girl walked through the classroom door, Michael's heart had stopped completely. She had his eyes. Not similar eyes. Not eyes that reminded him of someone. His eyes. Storm-colored gray-green that his mother used to call the only interesting thing about your face, Michael. But it was more than that. The way she held her pencil fingers positioned exactly like his. The way she tilted her head when listening, processing information with visible intensity. That expression when she concentrated, serious, evaluating, absorbing, that Michael saw in his own reflection every time he worked through a complex problem. Mrs. Constance had talked about reading scores and social development and mathematics progress. Michael had barely heard a word. Because he was looking at his daughter, who'd existed in the world for 8 years, while he built companies and closed deals, and convinced himself that success was the same as happiness. "Mr. White," his assistant's voice cut through. "Tell them I'm dealing with a family emergency." "Family?" His assistant sounded confused. "Sir, you don't have—" "I do now," he ended the call. Michael picked up the folder that had started this 6 months of investigation condensed into 47 pages. It had begun with insomnia. 3 a.m. in a Singapore hotel room, fresh off the biggest acquisition of his career, staring at a ceiling and realizing he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt genuinely happy. Not successful, not accomplished, happy. And in that moment, exhausted and empty, he thought about Wendy Moore. The woman he'd loved at 24. The woman he'd walked away from because ambition seemed more important than love. The woman he'd spent 9 years trying not to think about. So he'd hired someone to find her. Just to know if she was okay, he'd told himself. Just to get closure. But when the investigator's report came back, subject, Wendy Moore. Occupation, server at Rosie's Diner. Status, single mother. Dependent, Sarah Moore, age 8-something, had cracked open in Michael's chest. Single mother. 8 years old. He'd done the math immediately. Counted backward from Sarah's birth date. Realized the timing aligned perfectly with when he'd left Wendy standing in that apartment, chasing dreams that had delivered everything except what mattered. And when the investigator sent a photo-candid shot of a little girl leaving school, backpack bouncing, eyes the exact shade of storm-colored gray-green Michael had known. Not suspected. Known. That was his daughter. His daughter, who'd grown up without him, who'd never heard his voice, or felt his hand in hers, or known that somewhere in the world, she had a father who would have. Who would have what? That was the question destroying him. Would 24-year-old Michael, ambitious, driven, obsessed with proving himself, have stayed for a woman he loved and a child he'd never planned? He wanted to believe yes. But the man who'd changed his number without sending it, who'd disappeared into success without looking back, who'd ignored emails and avoided mutual friends, and built walls around himself made of ambition and achievement, that man made the answer uncertain. Which was worse? That he might have abandoned them anyway? Or that he'd never been given the choice? Michael's phone buzzed. He'd sent Wendy a text 40 minutes ago. Simple, inadequate, Wendy. She hadn't responded. 3 dots appeared on his screen, then disappeared. Then, appeared again. Wendy was there. On the other end, deciding whether he deserved an answer. The dots vanished. No message came. Michael stared at his phone device that connected him to thousands of people, that ran a company worth billions, that gave him access to almost anyone in the world, and realized it couldn't bridge 9 years of silence. He typed another message. I saw her, Wendy. I saw Sarah. And I know. Please, just talk to me. Send. Delivered. Read. Nothing. Michael set the phone down and returned to the window, looking out over a city full of people living their lives. Somewhere down there, 40 minutes away, a woman he'd once loved was deciding whether to let him back in, and a daughter he'd never met was going about her day, not knowing her entire world was about to shift. The intercom buzzed again. Mr. White, I really need you to find out where Wendy Moore works. The words came out before he'd fully decided. I need the address. I'm sorry, who? Just find it, and book me out of all meetings for the rest of this week. The entire week? Yes. The intercom crackled again. Different voice, this time sharper, more demanding. Michael, it's Victoria. What the hell is going on? You can't just cancel the board meeting. The Tokyo investors fly out tomorrow. This deal is worth $400 million. Victoria Chen, his business partner for 8 years. The woman who'd helped him build White Industries from a startup to an empire. She didn't ask about his life. She didn't need to. Work was life. It always had been. Something came up, Michael said. Something came up? Her voice went cold. Michael, you don't cancel $400 million deals because something came up. What's more important than this? My daughter. Silence. Then, your what? I have a daughter, Victoria. I just found out. She's 8 years old. You Victoria made a sound between a laugh and a gasp. You have a kid? Since when? Since 9 years ago. I just didn't know. Michael, listen to yourself. You can't derail everything we've built for. I'm not derailing anything. I'm restructuring my priorities. This is a mistake. Her voice turned hard. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment. That's not the Michael White I know. The Michael White I know doesn't throw away billion-dollar opportunities for. Michael hung up. Because Michael White had spent 9 years building something impressive, and he'd just discovered he'd spent 9 years missing something irreplaceable. But here's what Michael didn't know yet. Here's the part that's about to break him completely. Because when he finally sees Wendy again, when he walks into that diner and faces the woman he left behind, he's going to discover that the cost of his choices is higher than any price he's ever paid in business. What happens in that confrontation? Keep watching. Because some moments change everything. Wendy didn't sleep Wednesday night. She lay in bed staring at her ceiling while Michael's texts glowed in her mind like neon she couldn't shut off. We need to talk. I saw Sarah. Please. By Thursday morning, panic had settled into her bones, like winter, cold, deep, pervasive, inescapable. She called in sick to Rosie's, something she never did. But Rita texted back within 3 minutes. Sweetheart, I saw your face yesterday. Come in, work will help. Trust me. Rita was wrong. Work didn't help. Every time the diner bell chimed, Wendy's heart jumped into her throat. Every time a car pulled into the parking lot, she stopped breathing. By noon, she'd spilled coffee twice, dropped an entire tray of glasses, and snapped at a regular who'd done nothing wrong except ask for extra creamer. Phil watched her from the kitchen window, concern creasing his face. When, you okay? She wasn't. She was the furthest thing from okay. Because somewhere out there, Michael White was coming. Not the boy she'd loved at 24. That boy was gone, buried under 9 years of success. But the man he'd become, the billionaire. The CEO whose decisions moved markets and shaped industries. And he was coming to her diner. The lunch rush hit. Wendy moved through it on autopilot, orders taken, plates delivered, checks dropped, tables cleared. Her body knew the routine even when her mind couldn't focus on anything except the door. She was refilling coffee at table 7 when the bell chimed at 1:43 p.m. Wendy turned. And there he was. Michael White stood in the doorway of Rosie's diner, looking completely, impossibly wrong, like a Rothko painting hanging in a gas station bathroom. His suit probably cost more than Wendy made in 3 months. His watch caught the fluorescent lights and threw money back at the room. Everything about him screamed wealth, power, success. Everything except his face. His face looked absolutely terrified. The diner went quiet, that particular kind of quiet that happens when something significant enters an ordinary space. Regulars looked up from their burgers. Phil stuck his head through the kitchen window. Even the radio seemed to lower its volume. Michael's eyes found hers across 20 feet of scuffed linoleum and red vinyl booths. Neither of them moved. Remember this moment, because what happens next, the conversation they're about to have will determine everything. 9 years of silence is about to break open. And what Wendy doesn't know yet? Michael brought something with him. Something that will destroy her. Phil's voice broke the spell. When? Table 12. Needs. Outside. Her voice came out rough. We talk outside. She set down the coffee pot, untied her apron, and walked toward the back door without checking if Michael followed. He did. The alley behind Rosie's smelled like grease and garbage. Not romantic, not cinematic, just brutally real. Wendy leaned against the brick wall, arms crossed, and finally let herself look at him properly. 9 years had carved lines around his eyes, added gray at his temples. Made him look like someone important, someone who mattered. But underneath everything, underneath the expensive suit and executive bearing, she could still see the boy who'd held her at midnight and promised her forever. How did you find us? The question came out harder than she intended. Michael's jaw tightened. I hired someone. 6 months ago. Why? Because I woke up at 3 in the morning in a hotel room on the other side of the world and realized I'd built everything I thought I wanted and none of it mattered. He said it like a confession. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you. About the life I walked away from. About whether you were happy. Wendy laughed bitter, broken sound. So you hired an investigator. I didn't know about Sarah. His voice cracked on their daughter's name. Wendy, I swear I didn't know. The investigator found you first. And when he mentioned you had a daughter, he stopped, pressing his hand against his forehead. I asked for more information. Pictures, timeline. And when he sent me a photo of her, you knew. I knew. His voice was barely a whisper. She has my eyes, Wendy. She has my everything. He reached into his jacket with shaking hands and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She gave this to me, yesterday, after Mrs. Constance's meeting. Wendy took it, unfolding it slowly. A child's drawing. Sarah's drawing. A family portrait in crayon, a woman with brown hair. A little girl with a huge smile. And a tall figure with gray-green eyes labeled Dad, with a question mark hovering above his head. The question mark obliterated her. She drew this last year, Michael said, voice breaking completely. For a class project about family trees. She kept it in her desk because she didn't want to make you sad. He covered his face with his hands. She's been imagining a father she's never met. And I... He stopped, shoulders shaking. I've been right here. In the same state. The same coast. The same world. And I never knew she existed. When he lowered his hands, tears were streaming down his face. Michael White, the billionaire who dominated boardrooms and commanded respect from the most powerful people in tech, was crying in an alley behind a diner. She's mine, Wendy said, and her voice shook with 9 years of protection and fear. I raised her. Alone. While you were building your empire, I was working double shifts. While you were closing deals, I was staying up all night with fevers. While you were winning awards, I was teaching her to read and tying her shoes, and making sure she knew she was wanted, even if her father. She stopped, throat closing. You don't get to walk in now and feel sorry for yourself. I know. You don't get to make this about your regret. I know. You left, Michael. The words tore out of her. You walked away. And I tried to find you, after I knew I was pregnant. I tried. But you were already gone. Already unreachable. Already someone else. Michael stepped toward her, and she saw something in his face that hadn't been there 9 years ago. Understanding of cost. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was raw. When I was standing in your apartment packing, why didn't you tell me you thought you might be pregnant? The question she'd been avoiding for 9 years. Wendy looked at him, really looked, and told the truth. Because I knew what you'd do. You'd have stayed. Not because you wanted a family, but because you're decent. Because responsibility would have trapped you. She wiped her eyes roughly. I didn't want to be your obligation, Michael. I didn't want to trap you into a life you'd resent. So you chose to do it alone. I chose to let you choose yourself, her voice broke. Because I loved you enough to let you become who you needed to be. Even if that meant you weren't mine anymore. Silence stretched between them, 9 years of it, condensed into this moment in this alley. I would have stayed, Michael said finally. I know. And you still let me go. Wendy nodded, tears streaming now. Because I loved you. And love means letting someone build the life they need. Even when it breaks you. Michael's face crumpled. He pressed his palms against the brick wall beside her head, not touching her, just close enough that she could feel him shaking. I saw her yesterday, he whispered. I saw our daughter. And she's remarkable. Wendy. She's brilliant and kind, and she drew a picture of a father she's never met because somewhere inside her, she wants, his voice broke, she wants what I took from her. What I took from both of you. Stop, Wendy pushed past him, needing space, needing air. You don't get to come here after 9 years and tell me what my daughter wants. I know I don't. I know. He turned, desperation replacing grief. But I'm here now. I found you. I found her. And I can't. I won't disappear. Again. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this. You can't fix this. Then tell me how to start. Wendy looked at him, this man she'd loved, this stranger wearing his face, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of a door opening. You stay away, she said, voice steady now. Until I decide what's best for Sarah. This isn't about you and me, and what we lost. It's about a little girl who spent 8 years without a father. And I will not let you disrupt her life, because you're feeling guilty about choices you made when you were young and stupid. Michael nodded slowly. How long? I don't know. Days? Weeks? However long it takes for me to figure out if you're going to stay or run. Something fierce crossed his face. I won't run. You did before. I was 24 and terrified and I didn't know what I had. He stepped closer. I'm not that person anymore. And Wendy, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking for one chance to know my daughter. Just one chance to prove I'm not the boy who walked away. Our daughter, Wendy corrected, voice hard. She's our daughter, and she comes first. Not your guilt. Not your regrets. Her. Yes. He said it like an oath. Our daughter. And she comes first. Always. The back door opened. Rita stuck her head out, eyebrows raised in a question. Wendy straightened, wiping her face. I'm fine. Be right in. Rita glanced at Michael, taking in the expensive suit, the tears on his face, the way he stood like someone who'd just been gutted and disappeared back inside. When Wendy looked at Michael again, she saw the question in his eyes, the plea. I'll think about it, she said finally. But Michael, if you hurt her, if you get her hopes up and disappear again, I will make sure you never see her. I don't care how powerful you are. I don't care how much money you have. You will not break my daughter's heart. I understand. Do you? He held her gaze. Yes. I understand that if I fail her, if I fail either of you, I don't deserve a second chance. I understand the stakes. And I promise you, Wendy, I will not fail. Wendy walked toward the door, then stopped. Without turning around, she said, Sarah has a science fair next month. If, and this is a huge if, I decide you can see her, it'll be there. Public, supervised, safe. She heard him exhale relief and gratitude mixed together. Thank you, Michael whispered. Wendy, thank you. She didn't respond. She walked back into the diner, back to her shift, back to the life she'd built, brick by brick, without him. But as she picked up her coffee pot and returned to table 7, she caught her reflection in the window. And for the first time in 9 years, she looked like someone standing at a crossroads. Now, here's what I need you to understand. Some of you watching this know exactly what Wendy's feeling right now. That moment when someone from your past shows up asking for something you're not sure you can give. When you have to choose between protecting yourself and risking everything for possibility. If that resonates, if you've ever stood where Wendy's standing, leave your crossroads, your impossible choices. Because this community, we don't just watch these stories, we see what happens next. Because what Michael doesn't know yet, Sarah is about to make a choice that changes everything. Wendy drove home that evening with white knuckles and a mind that wouldn't stop racing through conversations she didn't know how to start. Sarah, your father came to see you. No. Too blunt. Remember when you asked about your dad? Worse. Too leading. A billionaire walked into your classroom, and it turns out, absolutely not. She pulled into their driveway, small rental house, peeling paint, porch that creaked, and sat staring at Sarah's lit bedroom window. Her daughter was in there, safe in their world, unaware that everything was about to shift. Inside, Sarah sat at the kitchen table surrounded by construction paper, markers, and a half-assembled solar system model. Jupiter was giving her trouble. Mom. Her face transformed with joy, the same joy every single time. Like Wendy returning from work was the best moment of her entire day. Can you help me with Jupiter? The red spot keeps smearing. Wendy set down her purse, studying her daughter. Those storm-colored eyes, Michael's eyes, focused intently on the planet problem. Her tongue pressed against her upper lip in concentration. The exact same way Michael used to think through problems. How had Wendy never seen it? Or had she just gotten so practiced at not looking? Let it dry first, Wendy said, sitting down across from her. Sarah, I need to talk to you about something. Sarah looked up immediately, reading her mother's tone with the precision of a child who'd learned to navigate a single parent's moods. Am I in trouble? No, baby. Nothing like that. Wendy reached across the table and took Sarah's small hand in hers. Mrs. Constance called me yesterday. Something shifted in Sarah's expression, not surprise. Recognition. She told you, Sarah said quietly. Wendy's stomach dropped 3 floors. Told me what? About the man who came to the parent meeting. You knew about that? Mom. Sarah's voice carried that particular patience 8-year-olds use when explaining obvious things to confused adults. Of course I knew. He was in our classroom. Did you? Wendy's mouth went dry. Did you talk to him? Sarah nodded slowly. After Mrs. Constance's meeting ended, he was standing by the door when I came back from the bathroom. She picked at the edge of her construction paper. He asked if I was Sarah Moore. What else did he say? He asked if I liked science. Sarah's voice got quieter. And if my mom's name was Wendy. And if, she stopped, looking down at her hands. If what, sweetheart? If I ever wondered about my dad? The words dropped like stones. Wendy could barely breathe. What did you tell him? I told him yes. Sarah looked up, and her eyes were filling with tears. I told him I wonder all the time about what he looks like, and if he knows about me, and if he, her voice cracked, if he would want to meet me. Wendy came around the table and pulled Sarah into her arms, feeling her daughter shake with questions she'd been carrying alone. Baby, why didn't you tell me you felt this way? Because you get sad when I ask about him, Sarah whispered against her shoulder. Your face does this thing like you're remembering something that hurts. And I didn't want to make you hurt more. Wendy's heart shattered into pieces, too small to count. All this time, she thought she was protecting Sarah by not talking about Michael. But Sarah had been protecting her by not asking. What else did he say to you? Wendy asked gently. Sarah pulled back, wiping her eyes. He said his name was Michael. And that he knew my mom a long time ago. And that he... She hesitated. Mom. He looked like he was going to cry. He did? Yeah. He kept staring at me like he was trying to memorize my face. Like he was afraid I'd disappear. Sarah touched her own cheek. And then he said, I had beautiful eyes. Of course he'd said that. Those were his eyes looking back at him, the only part of himself he'd ever really liked. Did he say anything else? He asked if I was going to the science fair. Sarah's voice got smaller. I told him yes, and he said maybe he'd see me there. She looked at Wendy with desperate hope. Mom, is he my dad? The question Wendy had been trying to figure out how to answer. She looked at her daughter, this brave, brilliant girl who'd spent 8 years missing someone she'd never met, and made a choice. Truth. Yes, Wendy said. He's your father. Sarah's breath caught. Did he know about me before? No, baby, he didn't. But he does now? Yes. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing with that serious intensity she'd inherited from Michael. Is that why he came to school? Wendy nodded. He found out about you recently. And he wanted to see you. Does he? Sarah's voice trembled. Does he want to meet me? Like, really meet me? The hope in those words was unbearable. He does, Wendy said carefully. But sweetheart, I need you to understand something important. Your father and I haven't seen each other in 9 years. He didn't disappear because of you, he didn't even know you existed. But he did leave. And before I let him into your life, I need to make sure he won't leave again. Why did he leave the first time? Because. Wendy struggled to find words that were honest but not too heavy for an 8-year-old. Because sometimes people make choices that seem right in the moment but turn out to be wrong. I thought it was better not to tell him I was pregnant. I thought he'd left because he didn't want a family. Was that wrong? I don't know yet, Wendy admitted. Maybe, probably. Sarah studied her mother's face. Are you mad at him? What was she? Angry, hurt, confused? All of it, and none of it. I'm trying to figure out if I can trust him. He left once. Sarah. I need to make sure he won't leave you. But he came back, Sarah said softly. He found us. Doesn't that mean something? Out of the mouths of children. Yes, Wendy said. It means something. I just don't know what yet. Sarah was quiet for another moment. Then, can I meet him? At the science fair? Wendy's protective instincts roared to life. Every part of her wanted to say no, to keep Sarah safe from potential disappointment, to maintain the life they'd built. But then she looked at her daughter's face, hopeful, cautious, yearning, and saw Michael's determination mixed with her own resilience. Sarah wasn't fragile. She'd spent 8 years building a life without a father, and hadn't become bitter or broken. She'd become extraordinary. Maybe she deserved the chance to meet the man who'd given her those eyes. If I say yes, Wendy said slowly, I need you to understand something. Meeting your father doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes perfect. It doesn't mean we become a family, or any of the things you might be imagining. I know, Sarah said. And if he disappoints you, if he's not what you hoped, that's not your fault, it's his. Okay, and I'll be right there the entire time. You don't go anywhere alone with him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Sarah nodded seriously. I understand. Wendy pulled her daughter close again, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and childhood. He doesn't deserve you, she whispered. But maybe that's not the point. What is the point? Maybe the point is that you deserve to know where you came from, who you are. And part of who you are comes from him. Sarah held her tighter. Am I like him? In some ways, yes. The good ways? Wendy pulled back and cupped Sarah's face in her hands. All of you is good, baby. Every single part. The parts that are like him, the parts that are like me, and the parts that are completely, uniquely you. Sarah smiled small, but genuine. So I can meet him? Wendy felt something inside her chest resistance. Fear, the desperate need to protect slowly, impossibly loosen. Yes, she said. At the science fair. We'll all be there together. Sarah's face transformed with joy. And this is where everything shifts, because Sarah just made a choice that will force Wendy and Michael to confront 9 years of silence. What happens when they all stand in that gymnasium together? Father, mother, daughter, deserves this chance. Or if Wendy's right to be terrified. Because this community doesn't just watch passively. We engage, we discuss, we understand that stories like this aren't just entertainment, they're mirrors. So drop your thoughts next. Because the science fair? That's where everything either falls apart or begins to heal. 3 weeks. That's how long Wendy had to prepare for the science fair. 3 weeks to rehearse what she'd say if Michael didn't show up. 3 weeks to prepare Sarah for potential disappointment. 3 weeks to build walls around her heart that might actually hold. She'd researched everything, whether billionaires traveled with security teams, sometimes, whether media followed them to public events, depends. She'd warned Principal Hendricks that a notable parent might attend. She'd even driven past the school twice, mapping exit routes in case she needed to extract Sarah quickly. She'd prepared for chaos. For cameras and whispers and the spectacle of Michael White at an elementary school science fair. But here's what Wendy didn't prepare for. She didn't prepare for the moment she walked into that gymnasium at 6-7 p.m. and found him already there. Already kneeling. Already completely, utterly present. No security detail. No photographers. No entourage of assistants managing his image. Just Michael White in jeans and a plain sweater, crouched down to Sarah's eye level beside a papier-mâché volcano, listening to their daughter explain chemical reactions like she was presenting to the Nobel Committee. Wendy stopped just inside the doorway, frozen. And the red food coloring makes it look like real lava, Sarah was saying. Her voice animated in that way it got when she talked about things she loved. Her hands moved as she spoke, gesturing, demonstrating. I wanted to use orange too, but Mom said red would show up better under the gym lights. Michael nodded with the same intensity he probably brought to board meetings. Your mom was right. The red creates drama, makes people pay attention to what matters. That's exactly what I thought, Sarah beamed. Wendy watched Michael shift slightly, to give Sarah more room. His entire focus locked on her movements. Nothing performative about it, nothing calculated. He was simply there. Fully present in a way the 24-year-old Michael never had been. Do you want to see it erupt? Sarah asked. More than anything, Michael replied. Sarah reached for the vinegar bottle with both hands, concentrating hard, tongue pressed against her upper lip, and Michael's face did something that made Wendy's breath catch. It softened. Completely. Like every hard edge he'd acquired over 9 years of business and ambition just melted. When the volcano bubbled and overflowed with red foam, Michael didn't pull out his phone to record it. Didn't glance around to see who was watching. Didn't perform for an audience. He just watched Sarah. And when she looked up at him with those storm-colored eyes, and asked, "What do you think?" something in his expression cracked wide open. I think, he said, voice rough, this is the most incredible volcano I've ever seen. Sarah's smile could have powered the entire school. Wendy felt something twist dangerously in her chest, something between fear and recognition, and a feeling she'd spent 9 years refusing to name. She must have made a sound, because Michael's head turned sharply. Their eyes met across 20 feet of scuffed gymnasium floor and folding tables covered in science projects. He stood slowly, carefully, like someone who'd just been granted something precious and was terrified of losing it. Pay attention to what happens in this next moment. Because the look on Michael's face, the way he's bracing himself like Wendy might turn around and leave, that's going to matter. That vulnerability, that fear, remember it. Wendy walked toward them. Sarah spotted her immediately. Mom, did you see? Michael watched my volcano erupt. Michael, not Dad, not yet, maybe not ever. I saw, baby. Wendy's voice came out steadier than she felt. It looked perfect. Michael hadn't moved. He stood there, looking at Wendy like someone seeing land, after months lost at sea, desperate, grateful, uncertain. You came early, Wendy said. I didn't want to risk being late. He paused. I've been here since 5:30. 90 minutes. He'd been here waiting for 90 minutes, sitting in a gymnasium that smelled like floor wax and teenager anxiety, just to make sure he wasn't late. Sarah tugged on Michael's sleeve. Can you help me set it up again? I want to show the judges when they come around. Of course. He knelt back down without hesitation, following Sarah's instructions about vinegar to baking soda ratios like it was the most important formula in the world. Wendy watched them work together. Her phone buzzed. Work email from Michael's company domain, but not from Michael. From Victoria Chen, COO, White Industries. TO, Wendy Moore Metter. Subject, regarding Michael White. Miss Moore. I'll be direct. I've worked with Michael for 8 years. This sudden family discovery is affecting his judgment and our company's bottom line. He's canceling critical meetings, missing investor calls, jeopardizing deals worth hundreds of millions. I understand you have a child. I understand Michael believes he's the father. But I'd urge you to consider, is it fair to pull a man away from responsibilities that affect thousands of employees because of decisions made 9 years ago? If you care about Michael's legacy and livelihood, perhaps some distance would be prudent. Regards, Victoria Chen, COO. Wendy stared at the email, hands shaking with rage. This woman, this stranger who knew nothing about their lives, had just told her to step aside, to let Michael choose his empire over his daughter. Again. She deleted the email and shoved her phone in her pocket. But the rage stayed. Sarah's small hands and Michael's larger ones carefully measuring, pouring, adjusting, the patience in his movements, the way he listened to every word she said like it contained secrets to the universe. This wasn't the Michael she remembered. That Michael had been brilliant, but scattered, always thinking 3 steps ahead, never fully anchored in the present moment. This Michael was here, completely, utterly. And it absolutely terrified her. Miss Moore? Mrs. Constance appeared beside her with a clipboard. The judges will be starting their rounds in about 10 minutes. Sarah's volcano is quite impressive. She worked hard on it. Mrs. Constance glanced at Michael, then back at Wendy. Her voice dropped. He's been wonderful with her. Very respectful of boundaries. He asked me if it was appropriate for him to be here. If you'd approved it. Something in Wendy's chest loosened slightly. Thank you for telling me. The judges came through 3 teachers from the middle school, clipboards in hand, expressions serious. Sarah stood tall and presented her project with confidence that made Wendy's heart swell. The chemical reaction between acetic acid in the vinegar and sodium bicarbonate in the baking soda produces carbon dioxide gas, Sarah explained, her voice clear and sure. The pressure from the gas forces the liquid up and out of the volcano, simulating an eruption. I chose red food coloring because it creates visual drama and makes the scientific process more engaging for observers. Michael stood back, giving Sarah the spotlight entirely, but Wendy saw the pride radiating from him like heat. When the judges moved on, Sarah turned to both of them, eyes bright. Did I do okay? You were perfect, Wendy and Michael said, simultaneously. They looked at each other, startled by the unison. Sarah giggled. You guys said the same thing. That's because it's true, Michael said softly, not looking away from Wendy. Can I go look at the robotics project? Sarah asked. It's got a remote-controlled arm and everything. Wendy started to say she'd go with her, but Michael spoke first. Your mom and I need to talk for a minute. Is that okay? Sarah looked between them with wisdom beyond her 8 years. Okay, I'll stay where you can see me. She bounced off toward the robotics table, and suddenly Wendy and Michael were alone in a gymnasium full of people. Outside, Wendy said quietly. The evening air had turned cold, autumn asserting itself. They walked to the edge of the parking lot, far enough that their conversation wouldn't carry. Michael spoke first. I know this doesn't fix anything. One science fair doesn't erase 9 years. No, Wendy agreed. It doesn't. But I wanted you to see, he struggled for words. I wanted you to see that I meant it. When I said I wouldn't disappear. When I said she matters. You've been here for 2 hours, Michael. That's not the same as being here for a lifetime. I know. His voice was raw, with something that sounded like desperation. But it's a start. And Wendy, I will show up. Every science fair, every school event, every soccer game or spelling bee or whatever she does, I will be there. Until what? Wendy's voice shook, despite her best efforts. Until work gets demanding? Until some merger requires your attention? Until being a father gets in the way of being a CEO? That won't happen. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He turned to face her fully, and in the parking lot lights, she could see tears in his eyes. Because I've already lived the alternative. I spent 9 years building something that doesn't matter. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. I sit in boardrooms making decisions that shape industries. And you know what I realized when I saw Sarah? Wendy couldn't speak. None of it means anything, Michael said, voice breaking. Not one single accomplishment matters compared to what you built. You created a human being. You raised her to be kind and curious and brave. You did that alone, with no help, no recognition, no billion-dollar valuation. I didn't do it for recognition. I know. That's exactly my point. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. You did it because you loved her. Because she mattered more than anything else in the world. And he stopped, throat working. I missed all of it. Every moment that actually counts. So no, Wendy, I won't let work get in the way. Because I finally understand what's important. Here's what you need to understand about this moment. Some promises sound good in parking lots, under fluorescent lights. But the real test? The real proof? That comes in the boring Tuesdays, the sick days, the moments when showing up is inconvenient. Is Michael capable of that kind of consistency? Keep watching. Because what happens next will start to answer that question. Wendy wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. Actions, she said quietly. Not words. Show me with actions. I will. He said it like a vow. However long it takes. I can't change the past, Wendy. I can't go back and be there for her first steps or her first words. But I can fight for the future if you let me. Inside the gymnasium, someone announced the winners. Sarah's name echoed through the speakers, second place. We should go back in, Wendy said. Michael caught her arm gently. Wendy, thank you. For this. For her. For giving me a chance I don't deserve. She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Don't thank me yet. Prove it first. I will. They walked back inside together, and when Sarah saw them coming, her face lit up with something that had nothing to do with her second-place ribbon. It had everything to do with seeing both her parents standing together. For the first time in her life, Sarah held up her ribbon, beaming. I got second place. That's incredible, sweetheart, Wendy said, pulling her into a hug. Congratulations, Michael added, and then tentatively, Can I hug you too? Sarah didn't hesitate. She launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Michael froze for half a second. Then his arms came around her carefully, reverently, like he was holding something infinitely precious that might break if he wasn't gentle enough. When he looked up, his eyes met Wendy's over Sarah's head. And Wendy saw it clearly. This man would do anything for their daughter. The question was, would he do it consistently? After the science fair ended, after Sarah had shown her ribbon to every teacher and parent who would look, after most families had packed up and left, Wendy found herself sitting on the school's front steps with Michael, while Sarah helped Mrs. Constance clean up inside. The moths circled the parking lot lights. The temperature had dropped another few degrees. Everything felt suspended, like the world was waiting to see what happened next. She asked me to stay, Michael said quietly. Sarah did. She said I could help carry boxes. And you said yes. Of course I said yes. He looked at her. Wendy, I'd say yes to anything she asked. Carrying boxes, building volcanoes, explaining photosynthesis. I have 9 years of yes to make up for. Wendy pulled her jacket tighter. I need to tell you something. About when I found out I was pregnant. The whole truth. Michael went completely still. Okay. You left on a Thursday in March. Wendy stared straight ahead, watching moths spiral. I remember, because I'd taken the day off work to spend it with you. We made breakfast together, you burned the eggs, because you were too excited about the investment proposal to pay attention. You showed me the paperwork for the 100th time. You were so alive, Michael. So completely on fire with possibility. I was an idiot, he said roughly. You were 24. She pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. 2 weeks after you left, I missed my period. I told myself it was stress, my body reacting to you being gone. But then 3 weeks became 4, and I knew. She felt, rather than saw him tense beside her. I bought 6 pregnancy tests from 3 different pharmacies because I didn't want anyone in our small town to gossip. Wendy continued, her voice steady now. Used all 6 in one night. Lined them up on my bathroom counter like evidence. Every single one said the same thing. And I sat on that bathroom floor at 3 in the morning holding my knees and trying to figure out what to do. Why didn't you call me immediately? His voice was barely above a whisper. Because you'd already changed your number. The words came out harder than she intended. Remember? You left me a voicemail the first week, saying the company got you a new phone. You said you'd send me the number. You never did. She heard his sharp intake of breath. So I tried the startup's website, sent 3 emails explaining that I needed to reach you urgently. No response. I called their main office, got transferred to someone's voicemail, left messages that were never returned. I contacted your old roommate Marcus. He said you were traveling constantly for investor meetings, and I should give you space to focus. God, Wendy. I'm not finished. She needed to get this out, all of it. So I waited. I thought maybe after things settled, after the initial chaos, I could reach you. But then the funding round was announced. Your face was in TechCrunch. Forbes did a profile calling you the next disruption darling. You were giving interviews about changing the world and revolutionizing industries. She finally turned to look at him. And I realized something. You hadn't just left me, Michael. You'd become someone else entirely. Someone unreachable. Someone who lived in a world I couldn't access even if I'd wanted to. The version of you who lived on ramen and dreamed out loud and held me at midnight, that person didn't exist anymore. Michael's face had gone completely pale. So you stopped trying. So I made a choice. Wendy's voice was gentle but firm. I chose to let you have the life you'd fought for without the burden you hadn't chosen. I chose to raise our daughter alone, rather than trap you into a responsibility that would poison everything you'd built. I wouldn't have, he started. Yes, you would have, she cut him off. Maybe not consciously, maybe not at first, but Michael, I knew you. I loved you. I knew how much that dream consumed you. If I'd told you, if I'd somehow managed to reach you and said, I'm pregnant, come back, you would have come. Because you're decent. Because you have integrity. But every time a big opportunity came up, every time you had to choose between your company and our family, there would have been a part of you wondering what you'd sacrificed, what you'd given up. Michael stood abruptly, pacing to the edge of the stairs. You don't know that, don't I? Wendy stood too. Michael, you changed your number and didn't send it. You got my emails and didn't respond. You were so deep in building your empire that everything else, everyone else, disappeared. How was a child going to compete with that? Because it would have been my child, the words exploded out of him. Wendy, I loved you. If you'd told me if I'd known, you would have resented us eventually. She said it quietly, not intentionally, not cruelly. But in those moments when opportunity knocked and you couldn't answer because you had a family depending on you, in those moments, resentment grows. Michael turned back to her, and his face was wet with tears. So you decided for both of us. I decided to protect our daughter from growing up feeling like she was the reason her father couldn't achieve his dreams. The silence stretched between them like something physical. Do you know what the worst part is? Michael finally said. You're probably right. 24-year-old me, the one burning with ambition, drunk on possibility, convinced that success was the only thing that mattered, he probably would have struggled. He probably would have chosen wrong sometimes. He probably would have let you both down in ways I can't even imagine now. He moved closer, and his voice dropped to something raw and honest. But that's not who I am anymore, Wendy. I spent 9 years building an empire that feels empty. I achieved everything I thought I wanted. Money, power, influence, respect. I changed industries. I created jobs. I made a mark on the world. And you know what? What? I wake up at 3 a.m. in hotel rooms on the other side of the planet, and I can't remember why any of it matters. I close billion-dollar deals and feel nothing. I win awards and stand on stages, and the only person I want to tell is you. And she doesn't exist anymore, the Wendy I loved because I walked away from her 9 years ago, and she had to become someone stronger just to survive what I did to her. Wendy's breath caught. So no, Michael continued, voice breaking completely. I can't go back and be better. I can't undo 9 years of absence. But I'm standing here now, and I'm begging you, Wendy, to let me try. To let me prove that I've learned what actually matters. That I've become someone who chooses family over ambition. Someone who stays. This is the moment everything hinges on. 9 years of hurt and silence and protection, it all comes down to this. Can Wendy trust that people actually change? Can she risk believing that Michael's transformation is real? Wendy looked at him, this man who'd once been her entire world, who'd become a stranger, who was now asking to be part of her life again. If you come into her life, she said, voice shaking, you don't get to leave again. Not because work gets demanding. Not because it gets complicated. Not because being a father turns out to be harder than you imagined. If you walk into Sarah's world and then walk back out, it won't just hurt her. It will teach her that she's not worth staying for. And I will not let you damage my daughter because you couldn't follow through. Michael grabbed her hands, holding them between his. I won't leave, Wendy. I swear to you on everything I've built, everything I am, everything I hope to become, I will not leave her. Or you. How can I possibly trust that? Because I've already lost you once. His voice broke completely. I've already lived 9 years, knowing I walked away from the only thing that actually mattered. I'm not stupid enough, not broken enough, to make that mistake twice. The door opened behind them. Sarah appeared, backpack on, ribbon pinned to her jacket. Mom, are you guys coming? Wendy searched Michael's face one more time, looking for uncertainty, for hesitation, for any sign this was temporary. She found none. Yeah, baby, she said, not looking away from Michael. We're coming. They walked to the parking lot together, Wendy, Michael, and Sarah between them. And when they reached Wendy's car with its dented door and cracked windshield, Michael looked at it like it represented everything he'd missed. Everything he wanted back. Can I see her again? He asked Wendy quietly. Soon? Before Wendy could answer, Sarah spoke up. Can you come to my soccer game Saturday? Wendy looked at her daughter, then at Michael, and made another choice. Yes, she said. Saturday at 10, Riverside Park, Field 3. Michael exhaled, like someone who'd been holding their breath for years. I'll be there, he promised. I know, Wendy said. And somehow, impossibly, she meant it. The week between the science fair and Sarah's soccer game felt different. Michael texted every day. Not excessively, just small check-ins that felt both foreign and strangely natural. How's Sarah doing? Did she like the book I sent? Thinking about you both. Hope the diner wasn't too crazy today. Still on for Saturday. Can I bring anything? Wendy found herself responding. Short messages at first, cautious and measured. But gradually, conversations emerged. Updates about Sarah's week. A story about a regular customer who'd proposed to his girlfriend in the diner. Questions about Michael's work that surprised her by actually being genuine curiosity. And Sarah noticed everything. Mom, she said Thursday night over mac and cheese, you're smiling at your phone. Wendy looked up, startled. Am I? Yeah, you never smile at your phone. Sarah tilted her head, studying her mother with those storm-colored eyes. Is it Michael? All. You can call him Michael if you want, baby, or whatever feels right to you. Is it him? Sarah pressed, grinning. Yes. Sarah was quiet for a moment, pushing noodles around her plate. Then, Mom, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think Michael wants to be my dad? Like, really be my dad? Not just visit sometimes? Wendy set down her fork, heart squeezing. I think he wants to try. I think he wants that very much. What about you? Sarah's voice was small but steady. Do you want him to be my dad? The question landed like a physical blow. 3 weeks ago, the answer would have been simple. No. Michael White was the past. A chapter closed, a choice made and accepted. But now, after watching him kneel beside a volcano, after hearing him confess that success felt empty, after seeing genuine fear in his eyes at the thought of losing them. I want whatever makes you happy, baby, Wendy said carefully. And I want to make sure he's someone who stays. He will. Sarah said it with absolute childhood certainty. He promised. Promises are easy to make, but harder to keep, Sarah finished, repeating Wendy's own words back to her. I know, Mom. But I think he means it. Wendy reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best, Sarah squeezed back, then, softer. Mom, can Michael come to dinner? Here? Just once? Wendy's breath caught. Dinner. In their small rental house, with its second-hand furniture and leaky kitchen faucet. Michael White, who probably ate at restaurants that required reservations, booked months in advance, sitting at their scratched dining table. Every protective instinct screamed, no. But Sarah's face held such naked hope. Let me think about it, Wendy managed. That night, after Sarah was asleep, Wendy stared at her phone for 10 full minutes before typing. Sarah wants to know if you'll come to dinner tomorrow night. Our house. Nothing fancy, just us. Michael's response was immediate. Yes. What time? What can I bring? 6:30. Just yourself. Wendy. Thank you. She looked at those 2 words, then typed, Don't thank me yet. This is Sarah's choice. I'm just allowing it. I know. And I won't waste this chance. I promise. Friday evening arrived with the kind of anxiety that made Wendy clean obsessively. She scrubbed counters twice, vacuumed 3 times, hid unpaid bills, tried to see their house through Michael's eyes, and hated what she imagined he'd see. Worn carpet, furniture from thrift stores, walls that needed fresh paint. Mom? You're freaking out, Sarah observed from the couch, watching cartoons. I am not. You vacuumed my room. You never vacuum my room unless Grandma's visiting. Wendy stopped, vacuum still humming in her hands. I just want things to be nice. Michael's not coming to see the house, Sarah said with 8-year-old wisdom. He's coming to see us. Out of the mouths of children. At 6:29 p.m. exactly, headlights swept across the front window. Wendy's hands started shaking. Sarah jumped up and ran to the door before Wendy could stop her. Through the window, Wendy watched Michael get out of a car, not some luxury vehicle, just a normal sedan, and walk up their creaky porch steps carrying a bag from the local bookstore. He looked more nervous than she'd ever seen him. Sarah opened the door. Hi, Michael. Hi, Sarah. His entire face transformed when he saw her, like someone had turned on a light inside him. "I brought something for you, if that's okay with your mom." He looked past Sarah to where Wendy stood frozen in the entryway. "It's okay," Wendy managed. Michael stepped inside, and their small house seemed to shrink around him. Not because of arrogance or wealth, just because this was the first time in 9 years they'd occupied the same private, intimate space. "I wasn't sure what you liked," Michael said to Sarah, pulling books from the bag. "But the clerk said this was the best series for kids who love science." Sarah's eyes went huge. "The Element Hunter series. Mom, I've been wanting these forever." "There are 6 books total," Michael said. "I got the whole set. If you don't like them—" Sarah hugged him. Just launched herself at Michael, without warning, without hesitation, wrapping her arms around his waist in pure, uncomplicated joy. Michael froze completely. Then, slowly, so slowly, like he was afraid she might disappear if he moved too fast, his arms came around her. Wendy had to look away, eyes burning. "Thank you," Sarah mumbled against his sweater. "This is the best present ever." When she pulled back, Michael's eyes were wet. He cleared his throat roughly. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Dinner was simple baked chicken, roasted vegetables, rice that Wendy had checked 3 times to make sure it wasn't overcooked, nothing impressive. But as they sat down, Sarah insisting on the chair between Wendy and Michael, something settled over the table. Something that felt dangerously close to family. "So," Sarah said, cutting her chicken with intense 8-year-old concentration. "Michael, do you like soccer?" "I do now," he said, smiling at her. "What does that mean?" "It means I never paid much attention to it before. But now that I know you play, I'm very interested in learning everything about it." Sarah beamed. "I'm not very good yet." "I bet you're great." "I'm okay. Better at defense than scoring." She took a bite of vegetables. "Do you have a favorite team?" "I don't know enough to have one. Maybe you can teach me." The conversation flowed easier than Wendy expected. Sarah asked questions: what kind of work Michael did, whether he had pets, what his favorite subject had been in school, and Michael answered honestly, never condescending, treating her questions like they genuinely mattered. Then Sarah asked the question that changed everything. "Why did you leave?" The table went silent. Wendy started to intervene, but Michael spoke first. "Because I was young and scared and stupid," he said, looking directly at Sarah with complete honesty. "I had a big opportunity for my career. And I thought I had to choose between the person I loved and the person I wanted to become. I chose wrong. Do you wish you'd stayed?" "Every single day." Sarah was quiet, processing. "But if you'd stayed, you wouldn't have built your company, right?" "Probably not. And then you wouldn't be able to buy me 6 books or come to my science fair." Her mouth quirked in a small smile. Michael laughed, surprised and genuine. "That's true. So maybe," Sarah said with the kind of wisdom that only children possess, "you had to go away so you could come back as someone who could stay." The words hung in the air like something sacred. Wendy felt tears slip down her cheeks. Michael stared at Sarah like she'd just revealed the meaning of existence itself. "Maybe so," he whispered. Maybe that's exactly what had to happen. After dinner, Sarah gave Michael a tour of the house, showing him her room with its planet posters and science books, the volcano model from the fair, her collection of rocks organized by type. Michael followed attentively, asking genuine questions, treating her 8-year-old interests like they were as important as any business proposal. Michael's phone rang. He glanced at it, saw Victoria's name, and declined the call. It rang again immediately. "I should take this," he said to Wendy apologetically. 2 seconds. He stepped into the hallway, but Wendy could still hear fragments. "Victoria, I told you. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. Non-negotiable. I don't care about Tokyo. Walking away from everything we built. Then maybe you don't know me as well as you thought." He came back 2 minutes later, face tight with frustration. "Everything okay?" Wendy asked carefully. "My business partner thinks I've lost my mind." He smiled sadly. "Maybe I have. But if choosing my daughter over a conference room makes me crazy, then I'm fine with that." Sarah, who'd been listening from the doorway, walked over and took his hand. "I'm glad you chose me," she said quietly. Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Every single time, sweetheart, every single time." When bedtime approached, Michael headed for the door. "Wait," Sarah said, "can you stay for story time?" Michael looked at Wendy, hope and fear mixing in his expression. Wendy nodded, not trusting her voice. So Michael White, billionaire CEO, business mogul, man whose decisions shaped industries, sat on the edge of an 8-year-old's bed and read Chapter 1 of The Element Hunters, while Sarah clutched her new books, and Wendy leaned against the doorframe trying not to cry. When Sarah's eyes grew heavy, Michael closed the book gently. "Good night, Sarah," he said softly. "Good night." Sarah paused. And in that pause, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. "Dad." The word was barely a whisper, but it detonated in the room like something nuclear. Michael's face crumpled. He pressed his hand over his mouth, shoulders shaking, and Wendy watched tears stream down his face. "Good night, sweetheart," he managed. "I love you." "I love you too," Sarah said sleepily, like it was the most natural thing in the world. In the hallway, after Sarah's door was closed, Michael leaned against the wall and wept silently, years of absence and regret and overwhelming gratitude pouring out of him. Wendy stood there, watching him break apart and rebuild simultaneously. "Thank you," he finally whispered. "For tonight. For her. For letting me—" He couldn't finish. "She chose it," Wendy said quietly. "Sarah chose you. I don't deserve her. None of us deserve the love we're given. We just have to be worthy of keeping it." Michael looked at her, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but something close. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of possibility. "Can I see you both again?" he asked. "Not just at soccer games or school events. Really see you, be part of your lives?" Wendy thought about Sarah's face when she'd hugged Michael. About the wisdom in her daughter's words. About the way Michael had read that story like it was the most important thing he'd ever do. "Yes," she said. "We'll figure it out. Together." Michael left 20 minutes later, but the house felt different after he was gone. Not empty. Full. For the first time in 8 years, Wendy sat at her kitchen table and imagined futures she'd stopped letting herself dream about. And here's what makes this moment so powerful. Because Sarah just did what Wendy couldn't, she opened a door that fear had kept locked. She chose to believe in second chances, in people changing, in families forming from broken pieces. If you've ever been the one brave enough to believe when everyone else was protecting themselves, it's built on people who understand that sometimes the brave, if you know someone who needs to hear that second chances are real, that families can rebuild, that love sometimes comes back stronger after it breaks. Michael showed up to Sarah's soccer game 13 minutes early. Wendy spotted him from across the field, coffee in hand, looking slightly out of place among parents in weekend athleisure. But he'd tried. Jeans, a plain hoodie with the White Industries logo, sneakers that looked actually worn. Sarah saw him too, and waved so enthusiastically she nearly dropped the ball she'd been juggling. Rita had come for moral support, which really meant satisfying her curiosity about the man who'd walked into Rosie's diner 4 weeks ago and changed everything. "That's him?" Rita asked. "That's him. He looks nervous." He did. Michael scanned the field, like he wasn't sure where parents were supposed to stand, what the protocols were, whether his presence would be welcome. Wendy raised her hand slightly. His entire body relaxed. He walked over, and when he got close enough, he smiled at Rita. "I'm Michael. I know who you are," Rita said frankly. "Wendy's told me about you. All terrible things, I'm sure." "Not all," Rita's mouth quirked. "She said you read to Sarah. That counts for something." The game started, and Sarah played with fierce determination, throwing herself into defense, never giving up, always trying. She wasn't the most skilled player, but she was relentless. Every time Sarah made a good play, Michael cheered. Not polite applause, genuine excitement. When she blocked a shot in the second half, he jumped up with his fist in the air like she'd just won the World Cup. Wendy caught herself smiling. The weeks that followed established a rhythm that felt both foreign and natural. The following Saturday, Michael almost didn't make it to Sarah's soccer game. Not because he forgot, not because he didn't care, because Victoria ambushed him. She showed up at his apartment at 8:47 a.m. 13 minutes before he needed to leave with the Tokyo investors. "Michael." Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "I brought some people who'd like to speak with you. Mr. Tanaka and Mr. Yoshida have flown 16 hours to—" "I have to go." Michael grabbed his car keys. "I have a commitment." "A soccer game," Victoria said flatly. "You're choosing a children's soccer game over a $600 million partnership." I'm choosing my daughter. Michael, they're leaving for Tokyo tonight. This meeting is now or never. Michael looked at the three people standing in his doorway, looked at his watch, 8:49 a.m., looked at his car keys, and made a choice. Then it's never. He walked past them. Lock the door when you leave, Victoria. He drove 15 miles over the speed limit, hit every red light, pulled into the parking lot at 9:58 a.m., 2 minutes before kickoff, sweating, breathless, terrified he'd already failed. And there, standing by the field, was Sarah. Searching the crowd. Face falling as she scanned for him. Michael ran. Actually ran across the parking lot, past other families, dodged a stroller, nearly tripped over a cooler. Sarah, she turned, saw him, and her entire face lit up like he'd just given her the sun. You came, she breathed. I will always come, he said. Always. And from across the field, Wendy watched. Watched Michael doubled over, catching his breath, hair messed up, suit jacket nowhere in evidence, just jeans and a White Industries hoodie, and desperation to make it on time. Victoria had sent her a text 20 minutes ago. Asterisk, he chose you. $600 million. Gone. Hope you're worth it. Wendy deleted it. Because watching Michael sprint across a parking lot to keep a promise to an 8-year-old? That was worth more than any amount of money. That was proof. Michael came to soccer games every Saturday, showed up at school when Sarah had presentations, took them both to the aquarium on a Sunday afternoon, where he listened to Sarah explain the difference between sharks and rays, with the same attention he probably gave quarterly reports. He never pushed for more time than Wendy offered, always asked permission, always respected boundaries, always showed up exactly when he said he would. And Wendy watched, waiting for the moment it would fall apart. Waiting for the emergency board meeting that would make him cancel. Waiting for the acquisition that would take precedence. Waiting for fatherhood to become inconvenient. The moment never came. 3 weeks became 5. 5 became 7. 7 became 2 months. One Tuesday evening, one of those boring Tuesdays, Wendy had mentioned Michael appeared at Rosie's at 4 p.m., right when her shift ended. What are you doing here? Wendy asked, untying her apron. Sarah mentioned she had a dentist appointment today. I thought maybe you could use company. Wendy stared. You drove 40 minutes to sit in Dr. Patterson's waiting room. Is that weird? She didn't know what it was. Nobody does that. I want to, he said simply. If that's okay. So Michael White sat in a dental office reading 6-month-old magazines about gardening while Sarah got her teeth cleaned. And when Sarah came out cavity-free and proud, he high-fived her and suggested celebrating with ice cream. Later that week, Michael texted at 11 p.m. Can't sleep. Thinking about when you used to make that terrible tea that was supposed to help with insomnia. Does that stuff actually work? Wendy smiled at her phone. It's called chamomile. And no. But the routine helped. Do you still make it? Sometimes, when my brain won't shut off. What's keeping you up tonight? Wendy stared at that question for a long time before answering honestly. Trying to figure out if I'm doing the right thing. Letting you into our lives. Wondering if I'm protecting Sarah or just protecting myself. His response came quickly. For what it's worth, I think you're the bravest person I've ever known. And whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But Wendy, I'm not going anywhere. She fell asleep with her phone in her hand. The shift happened gradually, like seasons changing. Michael became part of their routine. Tuesday evenings after work. Saturday soccer games. Sunday afternoon adventures to museums or parks or bookstores. And somewhere in all those ordinary moments, Wendy stopped waiting for him to leave. She started noticing other things instead. The way he remembered that Sarah didn't like tomatoes but loved ketchup. How he learned the names of all her soccer teammates. The fact that he'd researched youth sports nutrition and started bringing orange slices to games. Small things. Consistent things. The things that mattered. One evening, Wendy visited Michael's apartment for the first time. Sarah had asked to see where he lived, and Wendy agreed with conditions. Brief visit, she stayed the entire time, no expectations. The apartment was modern and expensive, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, art that probably cost more than Wendy's car. But it felt sterile, like a hotel room instead of a home. Sarah explored with wide eyes, while Michael gave them a tour. When they reached his office, Sarah stopped at the desk. Is that my mom? Wendy turned. There, in a simple frame on Michael's desk, not hidden in a drawer, not tucked away, but prominently displayed, was a photograph Wendy hadn't seen in 9 years. Them, at 24. In Michael's old apartment. Wendy laughing at something off camera, head thrown back, pure joy on her face. And Michael looking at her like she was the only thing in the entire world that mattered. Wendy's hands started shaking. "You kept this?" Her voice came out strangled. Michael stood in the doorway, vulnerability written across his face. "I've kept it since the day I left. Took it with me to every apartment, every office. When I had to pack light and leave things behind, that photo stayed." Why? Because even when I was trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice, even when I was building everything I thought I wanted, that photo reminded me of who I'd been. He moved closer, who I wanted to be again. I looked at it every single day for 9 years and wondered if you were happy, if you thought about me, if there was any chance. I tried not to, Wendy admitted. Did it work? No. The admission hung between them like something fragile and precious. Sarah, sensing something important, quietly left the office. Wendy picked up the frame, studying their younger selves. "We look so happy." "We were. And then you left." "And then I left," Michael agreed quietly. "And I've regretted it every single day since." Wendy set the photo down carefully. "Michael, I need to know something. If I let you in, really let you in, can you handle ordinary? Because that's what life is. It's not science fairs and soccer games every week. It's homework battles and sick days and arguments about screen time. It's mundane and exhausting, and sometimes incredibly boring." "I want boring," Michael said fiercely. "I want homework battles and sick days and arguments about bedtime. I want to help with math problems I don't understand and sit through school assemblies and drive carpool. I want every single ordinary moment I missed." "What about your company?" "I've restructured everything. Promoted my VP to COO, distributed responsibilities, built systems that don't require me personally every minute." He stepped closer. "I meant what I said, Wendy. This matters more. You and Sarah matter more than any acquisition or stock price or board meeting. I spent 9 years prioritizing the wrong things. I'm not making that mistake again." Wendy looked at him, this man who'd once chosen ambition over love, who'd built an empire while she'd built a life, who now stood in front of her asking for ordinary. "I don't know if I'm ready," she said honestly. "That's okay." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "I'm not asking you to be ready today. I'm asking if you'll let me keep showing up, keep proving I've changed. Keep earning a place in your lives, in both your lives, not through grand gestures, but through consistency, through being present. And if I can't give you what you want, then I'll still show up for Sarah, because she's my daughter and I love her." His voice dropped. "But Wendy, I need you to know that what I want isn't just to be Sarah's father. I want a chance with you, to see if what we had 9 years ago could become something new, something stronger, something that lasts." Tears slipped down Wendy's cheeks. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Me too," he smiled sadly. "But I'd rather be terrified with you than successful without you." From the living room, Sarah called out, "Can we watch a movie?" Wendy laughed wetly. "We should go." "Wait." Michael squeezed her hand gently. "Just think about it, about us, about the possibility." Wendy looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, no longer the boy she'd loved, but a man who'd learned what mattered. "I'm already thinking about it," she admitted. As they left his apartment and returned to her small house, Wendy realized something. She'd been thinking about it since the moment he walked back into her life. 2 months after the science fair, Wendy woke up on a Saturday morning and realized she'd stopped waiting for Michael to disappear. The fear hadn't vanished, probably never would completely. But somewhere between the 10th soccer game and the 20th Tuesday evening, between watching him help Sarah with fractions and seeing him show up early to her school assembly, Wendy had started believing. Not in perfection. In presence? Sarah appeared in her doorway, already dressed. "Mom," Michael texted. "He wants to know if we're free next Friday." "For what?" He said something about a gala. "For charity?" Sarah climbed onto Wendy's bed. "What's a gala?" Wendy's stomach flipped. "It's a fancy party where people donate money to important causes." "Oh," Sarah considered this. "Do I have to wear a dress?" "Probably. Can it have pockets?" Wendy laughed, pulling her daughter close. "We'll find one with pockets." Later, while Sarah watched cartoons, Wendy called Michael. "A gala?" she said when he answered. "I should have asked in person. I'm sorry." He sounded nervous. "It's the annual event for my company's foundation. We fund education programs in underserved schools. I go every year, but this time." He paused. "I want you both there. Not hidden, not as a secret, as my family." The word detonated quietly. Family. "Michael, I know it's public," he continued quickly. "I know people will notice, and probably talk. But Wendy, I'm tired of hiding the most important parts of my life. I want people to know about you, about Sarah, about us." There it was again, us. What if I'm not ready for that kind of attention? Then we don't go. We stay home and order pizza and watch movies like we did last Friday. I don't need the gala, Wendy. I just need you to be comfortable. Something in her chest eased. "Let me talk to Sarah." Of course. That evening, Wendy explained what a gala meant: the formal clothes, the wealthy attendees, the fact that people would know Michael was Sarah's father. "So everyone would know he's my dad?" Sarah asked. "Yes. And they'd know you and him used to be together?" "Probably." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Would that make you sad?" "Maybe a little," Wendy admitted. "Not because I'm ashamed, but because our story is ours. It's private. But Michael wants people to know we're important to him." "Yes." Sarah looked at her mother with those storm-colored eyes. "I think that's really nice, Mom. I think we should go." The gala was held at a hotel Wendy had only ever seen from the outside: glass and steel and valet parking that cost more than her hourly wage. Michael picked them up at 6, and when he saw them, his face transformed completely. Wendy had found a simple dress, nothing extravagant, but elegant. Sarah wore navy blue with deep pockets, just as requested. "You both look beautiful," Michael said, voice thick. "You look pretty fancy yourself," Wendy replied, and he laughed. The event was everything Wendy expected, and nothing she feared. Yes, there were hundreds of people. Yes, wealth dripped from every surface. Yes, heads turned when Michael walked in with them. But Michael didn't parade them around, didn't make a spectacle. He simply introduced them to people who approached with quiet, genuine pride. "This is Wendy Moore and our daughter Sarah. Our daughter. Not, my daughter I recently discovered. Not, the child I'm getting to know. Our daughter," as if they'd been a family all along. Wendy watched Michael navigate the evening, never straying far from them, checking constantly if they needed anything, making sure Sarah wasn't overwhelmed. When a board member started monopolizing conversation, Michael politely excused them. When Sarah got hungry, he found the chef and got her chicken fingers, despite the formal 5-course menu. "You're different here," Wendy observed during a quiet moment on the balcony. "How so?" "With them." She gestured to the gala inside. "You're professional, polite, but you're not performing. You're just you." Michael looked at her. "That's because of you and Sarah. Before I found you, I was always trying to prove something. Be someone impressive. But now I know what actually impresses me, and it's not net worth or market disruption. It's raising a good human being, building a real family, showing up consistently for people I love." Inside, the program began. Michael was called to the stage to speak about the foundation's work: scholarships funded, schools renovated, children given opportunities. Wendy listened to him talk about education and possibility and giving kids a real chance, and saw something she'd never seen before. Purpose that wasn't about ego. After his speech, during the quieter part of the evening, Sarah started yawning. "Someone's tired," Michael observed. "I'm not tired," Sarah protested, then immediately yawned again. "Come here, sweetheart." Michael sat down and patted his shoulder. Sarah hesitated only a moment before climbing into his lap and resting her head against him. Within minutes, she was asleep. Wendy watched them, her daughter peaceful against her father's chest, Michael's hand gentle and protective on Sarah's back, and felt the last of her walls finally, completely crumble. This was what she'd been protecting herself from. Not disappointment, not abandonment. This, the terrifying, beautiful possibility that they could actually be whole. "Michael," she said softly. He looked up, careful not to wake Sarah. "Thank you," Wendy whispered, "for staying, for showing up, for proving wrong every fear I had." His eyes went bright with tears. "Wendy, I'm not finished." She moved closer. For 9 years, I convinced myself that Sarah and I were fine alone, that we didn't need anyone else. And we didn't need you, we built a good life without you. Pain flickered across his face. But, Wendy continued, voice shaking, needing someone and wanting someone are different. And I've realized something. I want this. I want us. I want Sarah to have a father who loves her, and she took a breath. I want to see if we can be more than just co-parents. If we can be what we almost were 9 years ago. What we could have been, if we'd both been braver. Wendy, his voice broke. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I know, she smiled through tears. I never stopped either. They sat there in the ballroom, Sarah asleep between them, music playing, people moving around them, but none of it mattered. Because something that had been broken for 9 years was finally becoming whole. I'm not going anywhere, Michael whispered, echoing the promise he'd made months ago. Not this time, not ever. I believe you, Wendy said. And she did. Later that night, after they'd driven home, after Michael had carried Sarah inside and tucked her into bed without waking her, he and Wendy stood on the porch. Stars overhead, cool air, the quiet hum of their small neighborhood settling into sleep. So what happens now? Michael asked. Now, Wendy looked up at the sky. Now, we figure it out. Together, slowly. No rushing, no grand gestures. Just us, building something new from the pieces of what we were. I can do slow. Can you? She raised an eyebrow. You built a billion-dollar company in 10 years. That was before I understood that some things are worth taking time to do right. He reached for her hand. Before I understood that the best things can't be rushed or forced or manufactured. They have to grow. Wendy laced her fingers through his. She calls you Dad now. I know. His voice was thick. Every time she says it, I can barely breathe. She loves you. I love her more than I knew it was possible to love anyone. He paused. Except you. They stood there in the quiet, and Wendy felt 9 years of protection and fear finally lift. I thought I'd lost you forever, Michael said softly. I thought I'd made a choice I could never undo. And then, I found you again. And you gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. Maybe we both got a second chance, Wendy said. To be better than we were. To build something stronger than what we had. What we have, Michael corrected gently. What we have, Wendy agreed. Behind them, the porch light flickered, the one Wendy kept meaning to replace, but never found time for. Inside, Sarah slept peacefully in her room, her Element Hunters books stacked on the nightstand, her second-place science fair ribbon pinned to the bulletin board above her desk. Their daughter. Not just Wendy's anymore. Not just Michael's discovery. Theirs. Michael pulled Wendy closer, and she let him, resting her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat steady. Present. Real. Welcome home, she whispered. I've been looking for home for 9 years, Michael said. Voice rough with emotion. I just didn't realize it was you. It was always you. They stood there under the stars, two people who'd loved and lost and found each other again, holding on to something both familiar and brand new. Inside, a phone buzzed. Sarah's voice called out sleepily, Mom? Did Michael leave yet? Wendy smiled against Michael's chest. You should answer that. They walked inside together, and when they reached Sarah's room, she was sitting up in bed, hair mussed from sleep. You're still here, Sarah said to Michael, relief in her voice. Of course I'm still here. Michael sat on the edge of her bed. I promised I wouldn't leave, remember? I know, but... Sarah looked between her parents. Sometimes I wake up and think, maybe I dreamed you. That you're not real. Michael's face crumpled slightly. I'm real, sweetheart, and I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. Cross my heart. Hope to die. Stick a needle in my eye. He said it with complete seriousness. Sarah giggled. That's gross. But it's binding, Michael smiled, which means I have to keep it. Sarah looked at Wendy. Is he staying for breakfast? Wendy glanced at Michael, saw the hope and question in his eyes, and made another choice. If he wants to. I want to, Michael said immediately. Then yes, Wendy said. He's staying for breakfast. Sarah lay back down, satisfied. Okay. Night, Mom. Night, Dad. That word, Dad, settled over the room like a blessing. Michael kissed Sarah's forehead. Good night, sweetheart. I love you. Love you too. In the hallway, Michael leaned against the wall and exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. "She's extraordinary," he whispered. "She is," Wendy agreed. "And she's half you. She's all you. Your strength, your resilience, your kindness, that's all you, Wendy. But she has your eyes, your intensity, your brilliant, beautiful mind." Michael looked at her. "Then, she got the best of both of us." "Yeah," Wendy said softly. "She did." They moved to the living room, neither quite ready for the evening to end. Michael sat on the worn couch, the one Wendy had bought secondhand 5 years ago, and Wendy sat beside him. Not touching. Not yet. But close. "What are you thinking?" Michael asked. Wendy was quiet for a moment. "I'm thinking about how different this feels from 9 years ago. Back then, everything was intensity and passion and drama. Young love that burned hot and fast. And now? Now it feels steady. Like something that could actually last." Michael reached over and took her hand. "I'm not the boy who left you, Wendy. And you're not the girl who let me go. We're different people now. Better people? I hope so." He looked at their joined hands. "I know I am. Because of you. Because of Sarah. Because I finally understand that the things worth having are the things you show up for every single day." Wendy turned to face him fully. "Michael White, are you saying you want to show up for me every single day? For the rest of my life, if you'll let me?" The words hung between them, not quite a proposal, but something close. A promise. An intention. "I'm scared," Wendy admitted. "Of what?" "Of how much I want this. How much I want you. I spent 9 years building walls to protect myself from this exact feeling. And now those walls are gone. And I feel." She struggled for the word. "Exposed. Vulnerable. Like, if this doesn't work, if we try and fail, it'll break me in ways I won't recover from." Michael shifted closer, still holding her hand. "Then we won't fail. We'll fight for it. We'll choose each other every single day. And on the days when it's hard, when old hurts resurface, or new conflicts arise, we'll choose each other even harder." You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. He smiled sadly. Building a billion-dollar company was easier than sitting on this couch trying to find the words to tell you that you're my entire world. That I'd give up everything I built, every dollar, every achievement, every accolade, if it meant I got to wake up next to you and Sarah for the rest of my life. Wendy's breath caught. "So no," Michael continued. "It's not simple, but it's worth it. You're worth it, we're worth it." Wendy looked at him, really looked at him, and saw no hesitation, no doubt, just absolute certainty. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay? Okay, let's try. Let's build something new. Let's be a family, not because of obligation or guilt or anything, except that we choose it. We choose each other." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Yeah? Yeah." He pulled her into his arms, and Wendy let herself sink into the embrace. Let herself feel safe for the first time in 9 years. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, second chances were real. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other on a second-hand couch in a small rental house, while their daughter slept peacefully down the hall. And it was perfect. Not because it was grand or dramatic or the stuff of fairy tales, but because it was real, because it was theirs. And here's what I want you to understand about this ending. This isn't a story about perfection. It's about people who got it wrong the first time, learning to get it right the second time. It's about brave little girls who choose to believe when adults are too scared. It's about love that doesn't give up, even when 9 years pass and everything changes. If this story moved you, if any part of it resonated with your own second chances or impossible choices, or moments when you had to decide whether to protect yourself or risk everything, I need you to do likes or algorithmic success, and chances exist. That families can rebuild. That the mistakes you made at 24 don't define you at 40. Drop about love and loss and finding your way home. Because this community, we're not just passive viewers. We're people who've lived these stories. Who understand that real life is messier and harder and more beautiful than any script could capture. Thank you for being here. For watching. For believing. Epilogue. 6 months later, Wendy woke up to the smell of pancakes burning. She smiled before she even opened her eyes. In the kitchen, she found Michael and Sarah covered in flour, attempting to make breakfast. The pancakes were lopsided. The kitchen was a disaster. Sarah was giggling at something Michael had said. Morning, Mom, Sarah called out. Dad's teaching me to cook. I can see that, Wendy said, surveying the damage with amusement. In my defense, Michael said, I've never actually made pancakes before. I can tell. Sarah laughed and threw a dish towel at him. They ate the lopsided pancakes together at the table, the same scratched table where they'd had their first dinner, where Sarah sat between them like a bridge. Except now, she didn't need to be a bridge. They were already connected. After breakfast, Michael helped clean up a routine they'd established over months of Saturday mornings. Sarah ran outside to play with the neighbor's dog. Wendy stood at the sink, washing dishes, and felt Michael's arms come around her waist from behind. Hi, he said against her hair. Hi, yourself. I love you. I know, she turned in his arms. I love you too. I was thinking, he paused. My lease is up next month. Oh? And I was wondering if maybe it might be time to look for a place. Together, all three of us. Wendy's heart skipped. Michael White, are you asking to move in with us? I'm asking if we can build a home together. Not your place or my place. Our place. What about this house? We can stay here if you want, or we can find something new. I don't care about the location or the size or any of that. I just want to wake up every morning knowing you and Sarah are down the hall. I want to burn pancakes and help with homework, and argue about whose turn it is to do dishes. I want all of it, Wendy. All the ordinary, beautiful, mundane pieces of building a life together. Wendy looked up at him, this man who'd traveled so far to find his way back to what mattered, and saw her future written in his eyes. Ask me again in 6 months, she said. His face fell slightly. Oh, okay. Not because I'm unsure, she interrupted, but because I want Sarah to be part of this decision, and because some things are worth taking slow, worth doing right. Understanding dawned on his face. 6 months. 6 months, she confirmed. And Michael, I'm not saying no. I'm saying, let's keep choosing each other. Let's keep showing up. And when those 6 months pass, ask me again. And what will you say? Wendy smiled. I guess you'll have to wait and find out. Michael kissed her soft and sweet, and full of promise. Through the window, they could see Sarah playing, her laughter carrying on the breeze. Their daughter. Their family. Their second chance at everything that mattered. And 9 years after Michael White walked away from the best thing in his life, he finally understood what home meant. It wasn't a place. It was the people who chose to build a life together. Who showed up on boring Tuesdays and sick days and ordinary Saturday mornings. Who loved not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. Michael White had achieved everything the world told him mattered. But standing in a kitchen with flour on his shirt and the woman he loved in his arms and his daughter's laughter floating through the window, that was success. Real, lasting, beautiful.